mixed martial arts. Mixed martial arts. How do we like our martial arts? One at a time. One at a time. Don't you dare mix them. One at a time. Thank you very much.
Yes. I mean, I think the way Casey ended that intro kind of speaks to the build to this fight itself. Yes, there you see him. Nate Diaz, Jorge Masvidal are going to embark on a journey into the boxing ring tomorrow in Anaheim, California. Yes, a rematch. Well, 4 years in the making? It's going down, and I have a lot to say about this fight and the fight week itself, and that's why we are here. Welcome to the Nate Diaz versus Jorge Masvidal 2 preview show here on MMAfighting.com. I am Mike Heck here in South Carolina. Jose Youngs joins me from the NYC. There he is. How we doing, Jose?
I'm still exhausted from the UFC 303 fight week, but we persevere for silly boxing.
Yes, and Casey is here as well. Our boots on the ground throughout this entire fight week. Where is he? Where's Casey? There he is. Excited to speak with you, Casey, a little bit later on to get your take on everything and what you've witnessed this week. But I'll start with you, Jose. I'm gonna say something. I want to get your reaction to this because this Nate Diaz versus Jorge Masvidal fight has done something I never thought I would see in the combat sports world, because this fight was announced. It was met with sort of a mixed reaction. We had multiple press conferences in multiple parts of the country building this thing up. We had Nate Diaz walking off of a press conference. We've had team brawls. We've had all sorts of stuff. And then we had a little bit of space to kind of let this all breathe. And then fight week happens. Open workouts happen on Tuesday. And it was a tough watch. It really was from start to finish. It was very, very tough to watch. Then we had the press conference on Wednesday. And shout out to Brian Campbell, who did his absolute best to try to get something out of these two fighters, Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal. Didn't think in a million years it would be Neon that would create the biggest headline of the fight week. And then we had obviously yesterday after 4th of July, we'll have the weigh-ins and the final face-offs today. But going back to what I was saying earlier, Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal have done something I never thought that would happen. I am actually less interested in this fight because of the fight week than I'm just less interested now. Didn't think a fight week would actually drag me into this position. I wasn't super into this to begin with. I was fine with it. I thought the build would be enough to at least get me somewhat intrigued by the time we got to the fight. But this fight week has made me so much less interested in this fight than I ever thought I could be. How has fight week treated you in terms of anticipation for this fight? Has it done anything for you at all?
No, I haven't. I wasn't overly interested in when they announced it. I'm not saying I've lost interest. I don't know. It's a weird timing for this fight because it wasn't this big heated rivalry when they were in the UFC. Like, they fought for the inaugural BMF title, obviously, but there wasn't this big ugly buildup of trash talk. It was literally just like these two guys were coming off really impressive wins. They come from similar backgrounds, and they have these diehard fan bases on opposite ends of the country. It wasn't like Chael Sonnen and Anderson Silva, which obviously drummed up interest in their boxing trilogy because of the history that they generated in the UFC. It wasn't Anderson Silva on, this big run of impressive boxing victories when he fought Jake Paul. When Nate Diaz fought Jake Paul, he was the big storyline was, he beat Tony Ferguson and he quote unquote won. He beat the UFC. He got out on a win when they were trying to feed him to Hamzat and then walked right into a Jake Paul fight. And Jake Paul was coming off his first pro loss. So it was, is Jake Paul real? And, Jorge Masvidal hasn't had that pro boxing debut. So there's just really not a lot of hype or interest around this. The world tour started off boring, and then it ended on a weird note when Nate Diaz walked out, and then for some unknown reason they booked 2 more press conferences after that, and it was just as much a debacle as the last one was. So I don't know. I wasn't overly interested in this. I didn't quite get the booking to begin with, because even even now that we're like what a day away from this fight happening, everyone like Chael Sonnen's talking about boxing Jorge Masvidal. Nate Diaz is doing interviews saying like, yeah, I want to do it for a third time with Conor. I want to rematch Leon Edwards. I want to do this. I should have, if I could fight anyone, I'd be fighting Triple G. And it just feels like they're each other's, like they're not even each other's first options to fight. They're not even each other's most interesting matchup or most talked about possible fight. So I don't know. I wasn't overly interested to begin with, but I haven't lost interest, I guess. I'm interested in how Jorge Masvidal will look in a boxing match. I guess that's one thing I'm interested in. And then I think the only other interesting thing that Nate Diaz has said is he was kind of lazy and didn't take preparation for the Jake Paul fight seriously. So if we see a different type of Nate Diaz against Jorge Masvidal, then obviously the next fight that Nate Diaz has, whether it's boxing or MMA, would be interesting because Nate Diaz is always interesting off of a win.
Yeah. That presser was just so tough, man.
I
All
just
Masvidal
don't
want to do is eat freaking cheeseburgers. And Nate was like, Brian Campbell was like, "How does this happen? How do you get this done on Saturday, Nate?" And Nate was just asked Brian Campbell, "Well, how would you do it?" It's just like, This is what we're getting. We didn't even get a face off. We got a group photo of everybody besides the main eventers. It was just the whole fight week has just been awkward and weird and has done nothing to build this fight.
If there's anything we've learned is just that when you keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over, expecting different results, it doesn't work out because Nate Diaz has refused to face off with Jorge Masvidal for like the last several press conferences, when they do the ceremonial weigh-ins and we get a face-off, it's going to be interesting because we haven't had that. Instead, we've had dozens of press conferences that haven't been, and boxing press conferences in general aren't interesting. Even Tank Martin wasn't interesting, and they're like actually high-level boxers. Like just boxing press conferences do nothing for me. I don't know what you expected them to say Wednesday that they didn't say the previous 5 times. So it's just, yeah, I agree with you. It's a weird scene. It's a weird scene.
It's a very weird scene. I mean, I don't even know, like, how do we even break this thing down from like a technical perspective? Because I mean, really, the only thing we can look at here is the betting odds, and if we agree with them, and if it seems lined correctly based on what we saw at the first fight at UFC 244. Because I was cage side for that fight. Jorge Masvidal beat the hell out of Nate Diaz for that entire fight, and I know the fight ended a little bit abruptly for the fans in attendance. Nate got cut in a really bad spot, but Nate gets cut in a really bad spot in every single fight that he has. It just didn't seem like this was going to be his night and that it was Jorge Masvidal's night. I actually thought it was the best Jorge Masvidal has ever looked in an MMA fight. But now he heads into this boxing match as a pretty sizable favorite, minus 275, the comeback on Nate Diaz, plus 210. I think it's lined pretty much where it needs to be based on the first fight and what we saw from Nate in the fight with Jake Paul last year. Masvidal has had kind of a tough run since the Usman matchups and him getting knocked out and all of that. So, I mean, what are you even looking for here? Are you just looking to have some questions answered here? Is that really all we can do with this fight?
I'm not even looking at it as like, how will they look against each other? I want to see what Jorge Masvidal look will, big boxing gloves, because yeah, he did beat the soul out of Nate Diaz, but he also did things you can't do in boxing. Like right out of the gate, he faked a knee. He kicked Nate Diaz in the skull. He got on top of him and was ground and pounding him. And Nate Diaz is saying that this is where the fight was starting to turn when he was hurting Jorge from the bottom. So everything I just said, you can't do in boxing. Nate Diaz obviously said he didn't take the Jake Paul fight overly seriously in preparation. I want to see if he corrected that. I just want to see what they look like just in a boxing match, not necessarily against each other, because Jorge Masvidal's skill sets proved to be very successful in MMA. He has that kind of step in, switch, punch. Don't think you can't really do that in boxing because you can't fake a knee. You can't sprint to someone and fake a flying knee and then come over the top. You can't do that. And Nate, especially against, like, you look at the Anthony Pettis fight, he leaned against, and the second Conor McGregor fight, he pushed Conor to the fence and was doing these like hooks over the top of his head to Conor, and it was just like, it wasn't knockout punches, it was like volume. Like, yeah, we always talk about Nick and Nate doing like all these volume style punches, but it was very clinch and lean against the fence heavy while I punch you a bunch from the clinch. You're not going to do that in boxing. I want to see what they, so it has nothing, they could be standing against anybody. I just want to see what they do in an actual boxing match, where if Nate took it preparation seriously, and how Jorge look when you take away all of his other weapons, that when you mix together, he turns into a dangerous opponent. So yeah, I don't even care who they fight. I just want to see how they look in a boxing match.
From a social media perspective,
yeah,
where are the numbers for this fight? Where are the numbers for these guys? Because these are two of the biggest stars, arguably two of the 15 biggest stars in the UFC over the last decade. Like, they just draw interest, intrigue, all of that. Like, both these guys are there. Has the number sort of maintained over, like, at this point compared to what we've, I mean, it's obviously a different sport. It's not, you don't have the UFC backing behind it, etc. But are fans interested in this from what you've seen from a social media perspective?
I think they were really interested in the first press conference, and then it's been like a steady decline, because MMA fans will tune in and then they quickly realize that this isn't a UFC press conference. This isn't a UFC media day. It's just, you know, I love BC. I love Brian Campbell, but like, I'm not, so this isn't a shot against him. This is a shot against anyone in that position. MMA fans don't want a guy on the podium being like, Nate, how do we get this done? Because like that's just boxing 101. Like, Ariel did it for the Tyson Jake Paul, and then he kicks it to the audience. You know, they did it for Tank Martin. They did it for, you know, Tank and Garcia Haney. Like, it's just not fun to watch, because, you know, it's the promoters trying to promote this. It's not media members asking questions. Not even a fan Q&A would have been interesting, because you could have got something going. I know the neon thing kind of blew up in their faces, but it's just, no one cares about the press conferences anymore, because you know you're not going to get a face-off. Nate's not going to do it anymore. And then they're more interested in like Casey's there, and we're like, Casey, make sure you get any fights in the crowd. Like, that's the priority. It has nothing to do with the actual press conference. Like, I don't know. I'm sure there might be some interest during the fight, or better yet, there might be some interest post-fight, especially on the site, because this might be one of those matches where, like, you know, we just had UFC 303. UFC pay-per-views aren't the cheapest pay-per-views to buy. They had two pay-per-views in June. Let's not forget, they had UFC 302 with Islam and Dustin, and then they had UFC 303, which was supposed to be the Conor fight, and people probably saved for that. And then they got Alex and Yuri. Great headliner, and that card delivered better than the Conor card. So, like, are you going to ask fight fans, especially MMA fans, because this is an MMA fight with boxing gloves, basically, to shell out X amount of money for 3 pay-per-views in a little over a month? I don't know. It's going to be tough. They were wise to change the date from June 1st. They're wise to move to a date that there is no competition of the UFC. I'm sure fans and people went out on July 3rd on a Wednesday. I'm sure they might want to stay in and watch on a Saturday. I just don't know if they're going to want to shell out. They might want to read MMAfighting.com and go to our social pages to see what happened rather than pay for it. That's just my theory, though.
They did drop the price.
They did.
This was supposed to be $74.99 or whatever. It was $75, and now
it's on Fight Pass now.
And DAZN too, apparently, which I did not know until yesterday. So
very smart.
Yeah, so it's multiple places you could watch this. UFC is pushing this a little bit on social media, so we'll see how this does. I have the day off. Maybe I'll watch it as a fan.
I will watch. You
will watch.
For sure.
Are you not working tomorrow?
I'm gonna work regardless.
Fair.
Because, like,
if you weren't working, would you watch this?
Probably, because, like I said, I want to see how they do against each other. And, like, it's Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal. Like, I'm not gonna not watch them get in fist fights. Like, yeah, this fight is silly, but it's not like I'm watching, like, two guys from, like, an early prelim UFC prelim fighters that are now transitioned into boxing, headlining a boxing match. This is two of the, like, you know, more popular fighters, and what's the phrase? They are very. You don't get a lot of people like Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz in MMA these days. Sure. So I am interested in see what happens. I am, for sure. Plus, I'm sure everyone has followed along. It took me a long time to get home from Las Vegas, so I'm never leaving my apartment again.
There you go. Yes, if I were you, I'd probably be watching as well.
Yeah.
Who knows? I'll probably turn it on. If this was
I
like
don't know.
if this is in Saudi and the card was at like 2 p.m.
Yeah,
Eastern, I'm not watching this.
that's a good point.
But we get a normal time. Casey will be there, and how can I ignore it at this point? So you heard the betting odds, Jose. We're not really sure what we're going to get from these two guys in a boxing match, but do you have a coin flip-esque prediction here? Do you have any confidence one side or the other? What do you think happens tomorrow night in Anaheim?
I have literally no idea. This one's if I flip a coin, it's gonna hit the ground, and roll into a sewage drain, and we're gonna be like, "Well, didn't get to find that one." I don't know. And I'm not trying to avoid the question because like I don't have anything to base off of. Like Nate fought Jake Paul. Jake Paul is a huge human being. Like physically, he's a large man. Nate said he didn't take that seriously. It was his debut. There was a lot of nonsense going into that fight. Jorge Masvidal is literally 0-0 in boxing. And yeah, he had all of his street fights with Kimbo Slice, and I'm very confident he's trained boxing before, but we've never seen him in an actual fight. I have absolutely no idea. So I'm going to go with the more tenured, experienced fighter, and that is the 0-1 Nate Diaz.
I think I'm with you. I literally have no idea how this fight's going to go. I will lean Masvidal because he won the first fight, but again, he did things that he's not going to be able to do tomorrow night. So I'll just go with Masvidal, but if I'm betting on this fight, if the betting fairy dropped the 20 and was like either this 20 dissolves or you have to bet on one of these two guys, I'm probably betting Nate at the plus 210 or wherever he's at right now, because I do think this fight's, considering what we're looking at, is probably closer than minus 275 plus 210. But I don't know. It's 10 rounds. What's a draw?
Yeah.
I wonder what the draw line is, because that is very possible.
For sure. This could end up being like, I don't think either one's going to knock the other one out. I think if this ends in a stoppage, it will be a cut or a swollen eye or something. I think it's going to be a weird nonsense, like their first fight.
Boy, can you imagine that if it's just like another cut stoppage that ends it?
Love it. I love chaos though.
Jose loves chaos. Rest of the card, what do we got here? We got Anthony Pettis.
Yeah.
Competing. So that's a thing that's going to happen. He's fighting Chris Avila.
Yeah.
Pettis seems to be building towards maybe a fight with either of these two individuals. Sean Garcia versus Amado Vargas going down tomorrow. Devin Cushing, a lot of excitement. You like that
very
fight?
Good fight? I do.
Yes.
Vargas should win. But I would say like 60-40. Yeah.
You like chaos, and the Garcias, as you have seen, create lots of it. Devin Cushing versus Manny Correa. Daniel Jacobs versus Shane Mosley Jr. A lot of people are looking forward to that one. You're not looking forward to that?
No, I'm saying like that's the best boxing match, obviously.
Oh, okay.
Like Shane Mosley Jr., Danny Jacobs has probably more wins than the entire card has total boxing matches. Like Danny Jacobs is like 38-5 or something like that, and Shane Mosley Jr. is probably like 20-3 or 21-3 or something like that. Like they have, like I said, Danny Jacobs has like 40 plus fights, and Shane Mosley has like 20 plus fights. Like this is an act like this. Well, no, because Alan Sanchez is on this card. He has like 30 fights, and I know
he's got like 30. Yeah.
Yeah, Luis Lopez has like maybe 20, probably in the high teens, but there's some good matches on it. But if you're tuning in to watch a boxing match, Danny Jacobs, Shane Mosley Jr., like that's just a high level fight. 5 years ago, Danny Jacobs probably would have won, but I think he's closer to the end of his career, obviously. So my gut would say Shane Mosley Jr., but Danny Jacobs is so good. He's so good.
I think my favorite part of the press conference was watching Daniel Jacobs react to everything that was going on around him. He was just like, what the frig is happening right now?
Because he's a professional boxer, not an MMA guy that's transitioned over.
Yes. So that's the main card. 6 fights on the main card. Alan Sanchez versus Luis Lopez. And then there's 4 prelims as well. Tickets are still available. I got to say, it's selling better than I thought it would. Considering everything that's happened. So I think there's only like a few hundred tickets left for this one. So.
I'll tell you what, though. I think that Steven Dunn, I don't even know who he's fighting. Apologies for the disrespect to his opponent, but I don't think if Steven Dunn has gotten out of the first round, it's maybe one, like, what is he, like 4-0, 5-0, whatever. One of I think all of his fights probably end in the first round, if I remember correctly. If he did, maybe one got to the early second, and they've all been pretty crippling knockouts. I don't know, like, if boxing has like a top tap. I know they have like Boxing Rec and everything, but if they ever had like the fan polls, you know how Tapology has like to see who the fans voted on at the bottom. If they had that for boxing, it should be like 99% or something like that to John.
Shout out to New England's own Gabriel Aguilar Costa. A lot of New England experience. Box for CBS.
What is his record?
It is 3-7.
Oh, he's going bad.
Every fight he has lost has been a knockout within 2 rounds.
Yeah, he's going to bed. So the guy that gets knocked out within the first 2 rounds is facing the undefeated boxer that has only made it out of the first round once, and all of them have been by I know his last fight was like a 30-second knockout. I know that. And I know he has another one. He has so many sub-minute. We've talked way too much about this fight, but if you want to watch someone basically just get decapitated in there, it's that fight.
Yes. There you go. I think we sold this card pretty well here.
Steven Dunn versus Gabriel Aguilar. Is that what you said? Oh my God.
Gabriel Aguilar Costa.
God bless.
He gets got real good. And
yeah, he does.
That's, as Jed says, that's a fine attribute to have. Casey, come on in here. Because you're there. You're right in the middle of things. You were at the open workout. You were at the press conference. You were in the same room as that little shithead Neon when he asked the dumb question. What has it been like being there, Casey, in the building, in the arenas, watching these all play out? Are you now more amped up for this fight, having been boots on the ground in Anaheim for this?
Ooh, amped up. No, that's not the right word. That's not the right word. Jeez. God, I don't. This is weird. It's just a weird one. I don't know. I think I like kind of like Jose. Like, I'm not like uninterested, but I'm kind of like you. Like, I've been here. I've had these guys right in front of me, and I'm not more interested in the main event. I am actually interested in a lot of the prelims and a lot of these boxers I never heard of. Just because I got to be up close to them, got to kind of hear them talk to their camps a little bit. I kind of see them just walking around the hotel. So, that's just interesting. So now that there's some sort of person behind the athlete for me. But am I going to tell people to stay home on a rare Saturday night? A rare free Saturday night. Am I going to tell them to stay home to watch this? It's just tough. I don't know. I don't want to. I guess I have to keep reminding myself. I even ask people around me, I'm like, why is this fight happening? Maybe I just missed the countdown show. Maybe because nothing happens in the press conferences that's of any actual promotion. It's just, I don't know why this fight's happening other than a money grab. And as a fan, that always seems like the most offensive thing to me. Oh, this is clearly just a money grab. And as a fan, that's what you always don't want. That's why, we have all these, countdown shows and everything to kind of disguise that fact and kind of don't remind people that this isn't just for a bag of money. Like, oh, this is for who's the better fighter. I don't think that really matters to these guys. I mean, obviously they don't want to get their ass kicked. That just sucks. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm kind of going in circles here. I don't know. It's just I don't know what it is.
No, these are the right questions though. Yeah, why is this fight happening? No one's been asking for it. It's not like Nate's been. Nate watched Jake Paul, and Masvidal was there, like, watching as a fan. It's not like Masvidal showed up to be like, well, I'm going to go there so I could smack Nate in the face, or it's not like these two guys are, like, talking trash about each other. I mean, Masvidal, when I interviewed him in Savannah during one of his MMA cards, had some pretty harsh things to say about Nate, that he's, like, brain dead and all these different things, but like Nate's not going to respond to any of that anyway. So I think you make a good point about it coming off as like the bug spray stench of a money grab. And I think people are just like, okay, we know what this is, as opposed to like real personal animosity that needs to be settled in a fist fight.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's not a direct comparison, but I kind of think of Chandler and Connor in the sense that Chandler's like, I'm holding out. I want to fight Connor. He may, whatever, all Chandler stuff. But at the end of the day, we really know why, because Chandler's going to make a giant bag of money for fighting that guy. But everything is just kind of a disguise. We kind of just try to hide the fact that it's more than that. But we know it's just about this giant bag of money for Chandler and everything. But the UFC and Chandler and Connor are good at kind of disguising that. This fight, it's just okay. Pay $60 and these guys will make a couple $1 million and cool, and we'll kind of get cool tweets and viral videos from them. But I will be. But when they walk out and face each other with boxing gloves in a ring, I will be excited. I'm gonna feel that. But if I had something else to do on Saturday night, I guess it's one of those things like when this happens, people are gonna be like, "Oh, I forgot that fight happened. What happened?" Like everyone's definitely gonna be interested and want to see the highlights. But I don't think anyone is truly going out of their way. That's maybe not from this. That's not going to the actual event itself. Are truly going out of their way to watch this fight Saturday night.
Yeah,
and
maybe this is just a brilliant move by both fighters. Let's set the bar so low for this fight that is, if it's like somewhat compelling, then it over exceeds all expectations. You know what I mean? If they go out there and just beat the shit out of each other, then it's like, okay, cool. Didn't see that coming. That was awesome.
Wait, and that's the thing. Nobody's saying this is going to be a bad fight. No one's, it's just going to be a trash fight. I mean, or a boring fight. It's just there's no reason to watch it. Other than, it's like, but I don't, that's not the argument. It's like, maybe we don't know what's going to happen. We don't have any real good, analysis of the fight that we can really provide because there's just so little footage of them boxing. But we do kind of are confident it will be an entertaining fight, but entertainment at what cost? I hope so. So I'm kind of lost on it, really. But back to the Pawn guy. What was his name? The YouTuber Pawn. Was it
Neon?
Neon.
I don't know. There's not a part.
He's been kicked off of like every social thing. Like his whatever streaming platform he's on is the only thing he can go to, and their whole selling point is like, we don't cancel people. So he's one of those people.
Okay, that sounds horrible.
Yes.
But I didn't know who he was, and so the press conference, of course, started about 45 minutes late, or whatever. And he was beside me, and then he kind of asked me, he's like, "When's it supposed to start?" Kind of really grumpy, and I was like, I didn't know who he was. I was just like, I don't know. It starts when it starts. It's gonna start, I guess. And he was just like, ugh. He just rolled his eyes and walked away, and that's all I knew of him. That's all I saw of him the pre-fight wise. And then
He is the MMA fans will remember him from, I think it was UFC 296. It was a T-Mobile event, and he went on his little Twitter or Kick or Twitch, and he knew that Trump was going to go to the fights, and he's like, I'm going to walk up to Trump and talk shit right to his face. And then he got to the T-Mobile arena, and Homeland Security was like, you can't come in. We saw your video. And then Dana ranted about him at his post-fight press conference. That was Neon.
Oh. Yeah. How is he a thing? I don't get this.
The literal answer is kids these days. That is the answer.
I can't believe I'm the old curmudgeon-y dude these days, but it is what it is.
And I hate saying this, and it sucks, but like his stupidity became like the news because there was nothing really to pull from the press conference, except other than, I mean, it kind of sucks, but I guess that's a bad thing for the promotion. Then if that's the story is
I also think my first initial reaction was like when they announced it, it was like Nate Hoare. I'm like, whatever, like whatever. But if it was DAZN, and I know Showtime's not in it, if it was like DAZN or Showtime or ESPN or whatever, like that's an established name in the boxing lexicon. When it was like Fan Mio, it just kind of screamed again, like, who is this? Are they just trying to capitalize and make a whole lot of money? It also, I think,
Logan Floyd. Logan Floyd was the first fight they put on, or
right,
the most recent fight they put on. So this just almost lumps it in the same category.
and then they announced a world tour or a tour around the US. I'm like, don't know if we need that because we've all covered Nate Diaz enough. He's not going to want to do that after 2 stops. Like his older brother didn't even show up to 1 media day. Like the Diaz brothers aren't about promoting and all that stuff. Boxing also has this thing where like if you lose, you can kind of get a win or 2 over and then get back into the conversation of like I want to, like when Canelo lost to Bivol, everyone's like, oh, he's washed, and then he went up and beat Triple G and he was right back into it. Nate Diaz lost to Jake and now he's going to go fight a guy that already beat him and in a different rule set. It was weird. It's weird. Like the Chandler thing. Like if Chandler like loses to Connor, that sucks for his career because now he's gonna fall down the prelims. He's not gonna headline another pay-per-view. It's a whole boxing and MMA are just so different. It's so different in terms of how you promote a fight.
All right, let's take a couple questions, and then we'll get on out of here. Get you, so you guys can get a good night's rest for
That's right.
for tomorrow's festivities. You want to make sure you are fresh as a daisy. Go to the grocery store, get everything you need for the big party, everything. Wish this was an MMA fight. I don't think you're alone on this, Brandon.
Yeah, maybe that's the big kind of thing. I don't know. Yeah, why are they boxing? I don't know.
This is a fight that could headline a pay-per-view with no titles in the UFC.
Yeah. Certainly.
Yeah.
They created a fake belt and they'd headline at MSG and did huge numbers.
That's right. That's right.
I do kind of wish the promotion was, or maybe Nate and Jorge was a little more, I don't know, willing to do this. But like, this sounds stupid, but like, this should be like a decathlon type of event where like, okay, first we're gonna have a grappling event, then we're gonna have a wrestling event, and just see who's better at every single discipline of martial arts. I don't know.
I like that.
Yeah,
mixed rules, decathlon.
Yeah. Just okay. All right, now we're just doing straight up Greco style wrestling. I don't know.
10 rounds. That's a great call. Oh, it's so fun.
I don't know. It's just something. This needs something that I don't know. I was just thinking what this needs because why is it just MMA fight? I don't know.
Yeah, man. First fight was interesting for me because they're both having a good year. I was excited. Not so much now. That's from Scott McCrate. Yeah. But look, if you're a combat sports fan, if you are an MMA fan, if you're a UFC fan, tomorrow if you got nothing to do, if the weather sucks or something and you're stuck at home, you might go searching on the internet, what fights are on tonight? And then you see, oh, Masvidal and Diaz are fighting. Maybe you'll want to turn it on. I don't know. The more I talk about it, the more I'm like compelled to like sit it and watch it, but I still don't know if I'm going to.
Yeah, we don't really have too many questions. It's just
that's a bad sign too.
Yeah,
especially with this community we have. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, we have some comments. Just
Nate never loses, even when he loses, the people love him.
I mean,
I don't know how he's going to pull this one off today. Well, I mean, we'll see. Nate always finds a way. We knew at the Jake Paul fight, like if you looked at it from a realistic perspective and not like I hate Jake Paul, like everything that happened was sort of what you probably should have predicted would happen. Jake would win the fight, but Nate would have a moment, and probably the most memorable moment of the fight, which happened to be, got some momentum, but he slapped on the gilly, and that was the thing everybody remembered about that fight. So we'll see if Nate can do that again tomorrow if he loses this fight. That's it. Oh God.
There'll be. You know what? We're doing this preview show before the actual the ceremonial weigh-ins. So I don't know.
It would
maybe-
be objectively hilarious if Nate stepped on the scale and then just left and didn't face off with Boz at all. That would be hilarious. I kind of hope he does it because it just the gimmick would be incredible.
Yeah.
But hit the music, I guess. That's it. We're hoping this would be like 30 minutes, and we got 35 because 30 minutes for us is usually like an hour and 15. So there you have it. Stick with us tomorrow, MMAfighting.com. There is Social Knockout 3 happening tomorrow. More weird boxing. Darren Till is boxing tomorrow in Dubai. So there you have it. And then we get through this weekend and back to regularly scheduled programming. The Ultimate Fighting Championship back in our lives. Going to Denver. That card's starting to fill up a little bit. We just found out Drew Dober's fighting Gian Silva on that card, who just fought Charles Jourdain at UFC 303 this past Saturday. Gian Silva moving up. Montel Jackson, Damon Blackshear is on that card. So let's just take a little vacation from the UFC. Go to Chaosville, and then we'll be back to where we normally are next week. So for Casey, for Jose, I am Mike Heck. Thank you all very much. Enjoy the fights this weekend, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.